Hello and welcome to Abe's Complete Star Trek podcast, where I'm discussing all the Star Trek episodes, commencing with the original series, and where today I'll be discussing the 17th episode of the first season, the Galileo 7. I'm going to be doing this one a little bit differently to the previous podcast I've been doing, and I do apologize for the couple of month delay in between these episodes. Previously, the way that I've been doing my podcast is I have been doing it kind of a live review, if you will, as in I would watch a little bit, comment about it, watch a little bit more, comment about it, give my theories, opinions, and whatnot. But this time I decided to try and do something a little different, just to see how see how this format kind of goes. And I'd watch the episode first and in its entirety, and then just give my full review of the episode at the end. After I've watched it and had that refresher. So let's see how this one goes, and I hope you enjoy kind of listening to my thoughts. So the episode begins with the Enterprise being given a mission to transport some vital medicines to another ship so it can go to where they are urgently being needed. And there's a person by the name of Commissioner Ferris who's kind of managing that part of the mission. But the Enterprise has also encountered a quasar, Murasaki 312, and it's the Enterprise apparently has got standing orders to investigate all quasars and similar anomalies. My first kind of comment here is that one would think that regardless if there is a emergency, a life or death kind of situation, that would take precedence over any kind of scientific exploration, regardless of whether it's just transporting those medicines to another ship to get to where they need to go. I mean, surely that rendezvous could have been made a little bit earlier, so the medicines could have gotten to where they needed to sooner and therefore saved more lives. Whereas waiting, there was a total of 5 hours from when when they're due to meet up with this intervening kind of middleman ship, if you will. So what actually happens is Spock, McCoy, Scotty, and 4 miscellaneous crewmen. One of them is named Gaetano. I can't quite remember the names of the other 2. All hop into a shuttlecraft, and this would be the second time a shuttle is used, and feel free to correct me on that point, but it would be the second time that a shuttle is used in the original series, and so that they can go and explore this quasar. Personally, I think that in and of itself was a mistake. First of all, in that earlier episode, one thing which I'm fairly sure I've mentioned previously is I've signed up to, on Instagram, this kind of Star Trek facts group thing. And every couple of days they post up an interesting factoid about one of the episodes or characters or something. And one of the reasons why shuttles haven't been used up until, or are used only very sparingly, is due to budgetary reasons. But the thing which I'm finding funny is in this episode where it really serves no purpose and it causes, and is a really stupid thing to do. So let's send this little dinky thing into this quasar which can affect even the full starship systems. Yes, let's do that. That's really intelligent of us. But on in the earlier episode, when it could have been useful to bring people, and it's the enemy within. When Kirk was split in two, and they couldn't beam up the landing party, which was freezing on the surface, they're unable to use a shuttlecraft to bring them up at that point. I'm just finding that kind of hilarious. But anyway, so I'll call it Spock's crew. Not too long after they enter the into the quasar, they find themselves in a spot of trouble because the shuttlecraft systems start failing, and they end up crash landing on a planet in the middle of this. I'm going to call it a nebula just because it's an easier word for me, but it's quasar kind of thing. No communications and systems really not working. And I'm going to mainly keep with the Spock story because that's where this episode is centered. Just my only kind of comment in relation to the Kirk side here is that right after he loses contact with the shuttle, Kirk starts searching for them. Ferris, Commissioner Ferris, the commander of the medicine side of the medical side of the mission, it tells Kirk, look, you've got 3 hours to try and find your crew. After that, I'm taking command and ordering you to abandon the search to go and deliver these medicines where they're urgently needed. And does rightly. Personally, I do agree with Ferris in one thing. He did warn Kirk, that it was a bad idea to do this. And Kirk said, "Well, I've still got orders to explore all quasars as I encounter them." But again, I question the order of operations in this one. It should have been medicine first, quasar second, not quasar first, medicine second, regardless of. Yeah. Anyway, so Kirk does everything he can to try and find Spock and crew, and is unable to right up until the 3-hour deadline that Ferris has given him, because it takes 2 hours from the quasar to reach where the ship is going to be. Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, we have Spock and crew who are just recovering from crash landing on this planet, and not too long after, Spock initially sends a couple of crew members just to scout the area, kind of see where they've landed, while Spock orders Scotty to see what the damage is, being the chief engineer and whatnot. That's a good thing for him to do, and to try and see what can be done to repair the shuttle so that they can, leave. And they find that they've, exhausted a lot of their fuel. They also find that they're not alone on this planet. And that there are these really big kind of ape-like creatures that use these really huge kind of arrows. And a couple of and it turns out that in order to survive, they need to drain their phases and lose about 500 pounds. Fortunately, the ape-like aliens managed to kind of help them out with this by killing off a couple of crewmen. Neither was wearing red shirts, which I find surprising, but a couple of them die. One of the survivors there is constantly getting really ticked off by Spock's logicalness of it all. He's not showing any emotion, and just using logic to try and analyze the situation and try and get to and try and make right decisions. But he's finding that the decisions that he's making are not coming up with the best possible outcomes, and McCoy is pointing out to him that that's because that there is an emotional side to command as well. It's not all about 2 + 2 = 4. Sometimes you need to add the extra 1 to make 5, just so that you can get to the goal that you need to get to, regardless of whether that 5 is an actual necessary thing. And I have to agree with McCoy on this point. You can't just get to where you need to go on logic alone. It doesn't work. Logic does get you a fair amount of the way, do not get me wrong, but sometimes you need to play to the emotions of your crew to satisfy them, and to know and to properly gauge how best to react to a situation. So they managed to have quick funerals for the dead crewmen, and then everyone gets on board the shuttle after all the phases have been drained. there's just enough energy to or fuel that has been pulled from the phases, for one solid orbit of the planet before they start to decay. And all this takes, the full 3 hours that Spock knows the Enterprise would be able to wait before they've been ordered to leave. They managed to get into orbit. Now, just as a brief comparison thing, because the version that's on Netflix is a remastered version of the original series, not the actual original kind of slightly worse quality. I did have the original episode of this for a while, and to be honest with you, I prefer the original graphics. With the red kind, because it made more sense to me that whatever color and energy the phases spit out normally should be what the fuel color ends up being that spits out of the engines. Because what Spock actually does, not too long after achieving orbit, is to actually eject and ignite the fuel, which which essentially acts like a flare. Now, as far as Spock knew, the Enterprise was long gone, and there was no one around to see to see this. And it was essentially, instead of buying them, say a few hours worth of life in terms of how long it would have taken to do that full orbit, it goes down to about 45 minutes, and everyone's shocked that Spock would do that. But Kirk sees it at the last minute. The Enterprise turns around and they manage to beam the crew of the shuttle aboard just before the shuttle itself disintegrates. Kirk meets Spock shortly afterwards and makes an accurate comment that would be an act of desperation, which is essentially an emotional response, which is very uncharacteristic of Spock. And Spock, as he does, and partially, I'm sure the writers did this for the humor, but still, so that no one was logical. I mean, there was no real point in staying in orbit for all this long time if no one was going to see us, and so it made sense, or it was only logical to light a flare, just in case. And it saves everyone from a long, drawn-out death to a quick death, if nothing was going to happen anyway. And it was an act of desperation because, again, as I mentioned just a moment ago, there was no way that Spock could have known the Enterprise was still within sensor range. But I liked the lessons that I learned here about what makes a good commander. And one of the reasons why Kirk is such a good commander in and of himself, because Kirk listens to those around him, and sometimes, and I've made comments about this in previous podcasts. He sometimes, makes completely emotional and irrational and illogical kind of choices and command decisions, which have put the ship in jeopardy as a result. But he's good at taking all sides of an argument and making reasonable, kind of command decisions. And that's one reason why he is such an effective commander, or such an effective captain. Don't get me wrong, Kirk does have its detractors, but ultimately, the fact that he's able to maintain the loyalty of his crew and maintain their safety and well-being for the most part, I mean, it is a exploration ship, so it's not going to be a completely safe thing, but you can tell that he cares for his crew, that and that he's willing to go to bat for them whenever they're needed. He's needed to, and Spock is learning these lessons that he needs to how to get the crew's loyalty, how to and that sometimes an emotional response is required. Although it's hard for him, being a half Vulcanian, to be able to manage that, because he's been trained for his whole life to suppress his emotions. But ultimately, I did enjoy this episode because you did get to see, or did get to learn, those elements of command. Now, this and what does actually make an effective commander. So, yeah, overall an enjoyable episode. If you do have any, I think I'm going to go back with the next episode to the previous format, because I like being able to pull episodes apart in a bit more of an analytical thing that I have to with this last episode. That being said, if you do have any comments on how this particular one has gone,